Hi, I'm Fida Master Livy Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com gameplay between 1448 versus 1431. Let's start. Let's see, so e4, e5, classical opening, knight f3, white attacks the pawn and develops the knight, d6. Interesting. Not the most common move. The most common is like knight c6, developing the knight and guarding the pawn, and next we usually go like knight f6 or bishop c5, develop the minor pieces, and then the castle. So d6, not the best, right? Not the best, because not only doesn't it develop the knight, but also blocks this bishop. So now black cannot develop the bishop through c5, putting pressure on f2. So it's a little bit passive, right? Plus now I can just play like d4. Like d4, and if it takes, white can either take with a knight and have a central knight, or white can even take with a queen, preparing knight c3, then maybe like bishop g5 and a long castle. There is this idea as well. Let's say black goes like knight c6, white can play bishop b5, pinning the knight, right? Black can take with the knight is pinned, bishop d7, we just take, knight through c3, let's say knight f6, right? And now simply bishop g5. Pinning the knight, let's say black goes bishop e7, and now white simply castles long. And this is, a pretty good position. White's king is safe, white has the center, active pieces, right? Potentially we can play like knight d5 maybe, or push e5 in the center, pawn break. If black castles kingside, we can also start attacking the king with like h4 and like attack steamroll, right, with the pawns, maybe like a rook lift potentially. I mean, there are multiple ideas. So that's one thing about d6, is that white can play simply d4, versus if black plays first knight c6, now already d4 is not as great, because now black did not play d6 yet, so he can make a more active move, for example like bishop c5, putting pressure here, right? So here black is fine. So that's why d6 not the best move. I think it's called like the Philidor defense or something. Okay, let's see. So white did play d4. Okay. ed. So black decided to take. Another move would be knight d7, keeping the center, right? Keeping the center. The problem is this blocks the bishop. Yeah, blocks the bishop, blocks the queen, blocks the bishop, and now I can make a move like bishop c4. So at this point you may think there are two logical moves. There is bishop c4 and there is knight c3, right? So which one is better, bishop c4 or knight c3? The best one is bishop c4. Why? For two reasons. One reason is we develop the kingside bishop, so next move we're ready to castle. This is more important than to play knight c3. You can play knight c3 later on, right? What if the situation changes and you don't want to play knight c3? What if you want to support this pawn with another pawn? What if you want to play pawn through c3? And then that knight can go through d2 potentially, right? And then from d2 to like c4 or b3 or f1 g3. So first you want to make the move that you know 100% you want to make, like castling. You want to castle for sure, but the knight is more flexible, so the second move is the one that's more flexible, that you will make depending on the move your opponent will make, right? So that's one reason why first bishop c4. The second reason is that we immediately put pressure on the f7 pawn, right? We see that now the bishop is blocked, so the bishop can't really, oppose our bishop, right? The black can't really play like bishop e6, so f7 is very weak. Also, we see that black's knight and bishop is still on the 8th rank, so black is not really in time to castle. Like, for example, if we play, let's say, move like, let's say, knight through c3, and they, let's say, go, I don't know, some move, let's say knight f6, and we make some other move, let's say bishop c4, yeah, and let's say they make some move, I don't know, bishop e7. So basically the point is that now if you play like knight g5, black can just like castle, right? And the rook guards f7. So that's why now already it's too late to play knight g5, because the pawn is guarded. So we need to act, right now, right, when the bishop and the knight is still on the 8th rank, right? So it's very, very key to play as fast as we can bishop c4, immediately putting pressure on f7 and threatening moves like knight g5 potentially, or d, depending how black plays. So for example, if black simply like neglects, right, the threat, we can play either knight g5 immediately, and now black can't really like guard the pawn, right? And next move we can either take with a check, and then black cannot castle, or with a knight double attack against the queen and the rook. Or another idea might be to take on e5 first, and now if black takes on e5, now again we can play maybe knight g5, and again threatening either knight f7 or bishop f7, right? If black takes with a knight on e5, we just take on e5 d, and now bishop f7 check. Although wait a bit, bishop f7, king f7, queen d8. I thought we win the queen, but then I saw bishop b4 check, right? And then black takes the queen. So beware of this, by the way. I mean, we can play c3, but I mean, then black can just like take, and take on e4, and black is fine, right? So so then bishop f7 doesn't really work here because of check, right? Okay, let's see what else. So then maybe but you know what? We can just like take the queen, maybe easier, right? King d8 and now bishop f7, and black takes on e4. Yes, black also took a pawn, but the point is this is a more important pawn than this. Now why? Because by taking on f7, right, now this pawn becomes isolated. There is no pawn on the d and f file to defend this pawn. So if you look at white's pawn structure, we have a sound pawn structure. All the pawns are connected. We have like two islands, right? These are called islands. And black has 3 pawn islands, right? 1, 2, and 3 pawn islands. So this is an isolated pawn. Next we can just like castle, and then like rook e1, simply develop our knight, our bishop and stuff. And this pawn is forever weak. Not only that, but also the e4 square in front of this pawn is weak, right? So potentially we can like kick off the knight with f3, the knight will go away, and then we will put our knight on e4, right? Or any other piece on e4. So this is called outpost, right? The square right in front of the isolated pawn is called outpost, because when you put a piece on e4, right, black can never attack that e4 square with a pawn. Black can never play d5 or f5, okay? So this is advantage. So this is, yes, one way. Or, like I said, if you don't like this, you can also play knight g5 attacking f7. What else? If if black takes with the e5 pawn, I think we looked at this, right? Knight g5. I was also actually thinking, no, but it actually doesn't work, because sometimes there's a tactic, but here I think it doesn't work. Maybe I'll show you in another variation. Yeah, so that's like one way. Another move black can play is h6, preventing knight g5. But the problem is this is slow. Again, black makes only like pawn moves, right? So it's also not great. We need to develop the minor pieces. Otherwise, right, the king will stay in the center and f7 will be weak. So that's the downside. And here again we can take. Now if black takes with a knight, we can take, and now bishop f7 works. Why? Because after king f7, queen d8, now the knight is still on g8. So bishop b4 check, we just play c3. And as you can see, the knight is still on g8, so the rook doesn't take our queen. See, so bishop f7 works, or even if it didn't, we could just play this, right? And it's also winning. But of course, if you can, bishop f7 is of course even better if you can play. If black takes with a pawn, so here when we don't play knight f6, there is this tactic sometimes, bishop f7, pretty interesting. So I don't know like exactly like if it leads to like checkmate or not, but it looks pretty good. So king f7, right, we allure the king to f7, and then we can play knight e5 check, right? Black cannot take because we take the queen. And then if black plays like king e8, we have like, well, like queen h5, right? It should be of course completely winning, right? And here, and now we have a million moves, of course. Let's say queen f7 check. Should be some checkmate here, I think. King d6. I don't know, like there's a million checks. Of course, there is queen back to d5, there's knight c4 check, right? And let's say if king c6, then queen d5, and this is checkmate. If what else? King c5. I mean, again, we can play many moves. Queen d5 check, for example, right? King b4, and now again we can give a check like this. Here b3 checkmate, or c3, king a4, b3 checkmate, or any other way, right? There's a million checkmates, or like this we can play, and queen a5. I mean, it's completely winning, right? So that's just one way. Even if we didn't have that, there would still be moves like knight g6, or right, double attack against the king and the rook, or sometimes knight f7. The point is, what you need to understand is, because black has all the pawns of dark squares, black has weak light squares. The whole diagonal is weak, like e8, h5, right? Diagonal is weak, and particularly g6 and f7. Okay, so let's see if that. What else? I mean, if king e7, I mean, we can play like knight g6, right? Double attack, and then we win the rook. If king e6, I mean, then I think we can like queen d5 is the move, right? And if black goes king e7, then again, I guess we can just give a check, and then we just transpose to the checkmating line, right? Queen f7 with checkmate. If they go like this, also should be winning. Maybe we can even sacrifice the knight. Queen f7 check, king e5, and maybe like wait, should be some checkmate here. Maybe like bishop f4 even, right? Check, king e4, and now knight c3 check, king d4, and now long castle checkmate. Yeah, so look at white's development, right? White has all his pieces basically developed, and look at black. All the pieces are on the 8th rank, and the king is in the center. And actually not checkmate yet, but okay, should be checkmate in couple moves. Like for example, queen d5 check, king b6, queen b5 check, right? That's one way. Or bishop e3 check goes here, and then like let's say here check, check, and checkmate, and a million way to checkmate. So anyway, remember this idea: bishop f7 check, and then knight takes e5, right? With very, very good compensation, and a lot of lines simply lead to forcing checkmate, or if not, at least you get like back material, and you have huge advantage. So that's the problem with h6. Another move would be bishop e7, but bishop e7, I think we can, I think there is a d, wait, I think there's like d, and what was the line? And I think if d, so there's this idea sometimes, which is knight g5, attacking f7. Looks like we lose the knight, but after bishop g5 we play queen h5. Queen h5 double attack on the bishop, right, against the bishop, and f7. Now if black takes on c1, it's just checkmate on f7, but if black guards on f7, we just get back the bishop, right? We can play like bishop g5, or maybe even queen g5 if you want to trade the queens, right? And we have the power of two bishops, right? And white has the advantage. Bishops in chess are stronger than knights. So there's this idea, or yeah, I don't know, or if g6, right? We just take. Let's say black goes, I don't know, f6. Now just bishop e3, and we have a nice diagonal. We have two powerful bishops. We also have very soon the d file. We just castle and play rook d1, getting the d file. White has a risk-free advantage. Okay, so as you can see, these are the problems with like knight d7. There are maybe some more precise moves for black, of course, but still it is a bit passive. Black's the queen, black's the bishop, so whatever black plays, still white retains a small edge no matter what. Let's see, so but black decided to take in the game. Knight takes d4, interesting. Although usually in the opening you don't want to put the queen in the center, because the queen gets attacked, right? Like for example here knight c6, it's fine to take the queen if you can pin the piece that attacks the queen, right? So for example here we can pin the knight, like I showed you earlier. Bishop d7, we just take the knight c3, and then we play bishop g5 and castle long. Like if you want to play for a win, it's great if you can castle opposite sides, right? Makes the game much more interesting and complex and complicated. So it's a good idea to like castle queenside if you can, but of course depends on the situation. So that's why here another problem with taking with a knight is that you move the same piece twice, right? Knight f3, knight d4. Why not move another piece, right? Again, if let's say when black plays knight c6, if you could not pin the knight, then queen d4 is not a good move. If you have to move the queen, so for example after knight c6, if you have to go back, then that's a waste of time. then of course you don't want to take the queen, because the queen is the most precious piece, and so black can develop his pieces attacking your queen and then have to lose tempo going back. But if you can pin the knight, then it's fine. So queen d4 I think was a better move here than knight d4, but okay. Knight d4, g6. So black flank to the bishop, want to put pressure on the knight and in general on the long diagonal. Okay, in general it's a bit risky to flank in positions like this, because potentially white can play h4, h5 and use the g6 pawn as a hook. A hook means that we use that pawn to open files, right? So for example, while the pawn is still on g7, if white plays h4, h5, nothing happens, right? h4, h5. White can even play like h6, but then black just goes g6 and everything's closed, right? Or after h4, h5, wait, how do I get rid of this? Let me get rid of, yeah, or if white plays h4, h5, black can just like type it with h6. See, so there's no opening of files. But so that's why you want to keep your pawns ideally on the same rank. Like not any pawn move that you make will usually create a pawn hook, meaning will help your opponent make pawn breaks to open files, like h4, h5 here, and then hg, a pawn break to open files, like the h file. So now white can again castle queenside potentially, and then use his rook and play h4, h5, open the h file, get his queen over to the h file somewhere, and then checkmate on h8 or on h7. So there's always this danger of checkmate on the h file. So that's the risk of g6. The plus is it puts pressure on the long diagonal. Okay, so knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3 makes sense, defending the knight, and next white basically I think want to play queen d2, f3, castle long. Why f3? f3 to defend the pawn, 1. In case black plays knight f6 and puts pressure on the pawn, 2. To defend against knight g4, potentially black could play attacking the e3 bishop, and 3. To start the attack with g4 and h4, to start the steamroll. So let's see, a6. I don't think this is like mandatory, but I guess like black thinks that white want to castle queenside, right? So he preemptively starts to prepare the attack. So okay, I guess it's not the worst. Queen d2 makes sense. Knight f6. Now, like I said, black want to play knight g4, a typical idea when you have a bishop on e3, right? To attack this bishop, because this is white's most precious piece, because 1, it guards your weak dark squares. As you can see, the bishop puts pressure, so we guard those weak dark squares and pieces, and 2, this is the only piece we can use to exchange his powerful bishop. Usually the flank to the bishop is the most precious piece, because it both is offensive, right, attacks on the long diagonal, but also defensive. It guards the weak dark squares around his king. As you can see, all the pawns are light squares, so the dark squares are weak. So the bishop guards those weak dark squares. So that's why we absolutely need this bishop to exchange black's g7 bishop. So if black can exchange his knight against our bishop, black will have a huge advantage, because then we can never exchange his g7 bishop, and 2, he will completely dominate the dark squares, because we will have no counterpart against his bishop. Okay, so bishop e2, not the best. It does prevent knight g4, but the problem is now if black plays knight g4, we have to, if we don't want to lose this bishop or move it, right, we have to take the knight with the bishop, which in general bishops are stronger than knight because they're like long range, right, long reach. So it's not ideal, although this is still good. Actually, it's actually still good, because we can just like play f3. Let's say the knight goes, the bishop goes back, and we castle, and now black no longer has this f6 knight. So actually the f6 knight, although in general bishops are stronger, but the f6 knight is very key for black, because it guards h5 and h7. So 1, it guards against h4, h5, and 2, when we do play h4, h5 and then we open the file, the knight guards h7. But now if black castles, now h7 is not guarded by the knight, right? So when we open up a file and we get the queen through h2, no one will guard h7. So that's why we can argue that the knight here is actually more important than this bishop. So that's why bishop e2, it kind of does prevent knight g4, but usually the most typical is just to go pawn f3, and that also prepares g4, h4, h5. Plus, if black doesn't play like b5 and stuff, we can potentially put our bishop on a more active diagonal, right? There's also the opportunity cost. We could potentially put it on c4, b3, where it puts pressure on f7, more active than e2. e2 is quite passive. See, so there's pluses and minuses with this move. Okay, so bishop e2, black just castled a short f3. Now see, this does make sense. This is not like, how should I say, this is not, it's not like consequent or you play bishop e2 and then you play f3. If you play f3, you do not need bishop e2. The whole point of bishop e2 is that it kind of stops knight g4. So then you do not need f3. If you, right? Black already can play knight g4. So just castle long and then go for h4, h5 immediately, right? Or I don't know. But like, don't play f3. If you play f3, you do not need bishop e2, and if you play bishop e2, you do not need f3. If you play f3, you always combine it with bishop c4, right? Bishop c4 and then bishop b3 if black attacked it, and then the bishop puts pressure on that long diagonal on f7 especially, right? On f7. So this is, yeah, this is not at all like, doesn't make any sense, like it's not consequent, right? But okay, let's see, f3. Plus white still leaves the king in the center, which is dangerous. If we leave the king in the center for too much time, usually the best strategy against the king in the center is attack in the center, counter blow in the center. So there is a risk that black might soon push like d5 immediately, or c5, kick out the knight, and then like d5. Basically, black can like push d5 and open up the game, and then the king in the center will be vulnerable. So we need to castle as fast as we can. Okay, queen e7 black plays. So black doesn't go for d5, although potentially this bishop is quite loose. Potentially black would play rook e8 and then like d5, right? And then if we take, we lose this e3 bishop, yeah? So, okay, it's okay, queen e7, g4. Again, white doesn't castle, I don't know why. While g4 is thematic, right? It helps with h5, maybe even potentially g5. The knight moves away and then we have knight d5. This is like the positional approach, right? We gain space, the knight goes away, and then we centralize our knight, attack the queen, and put pressure on c7, on e7, on f6. But still, number one priority is to castle, right? If you don't want to lose like a lot of games, always make sure that you castle as fast as you can, okay? Castle as fast as you can and then like start the attack. There are exceptions, but that is usually like much more like high level. In general, you want to just castle as fast as you can and then think about attack, okay? So g4, c5, see already black starts some counterplay here. Knight b3, okay, b6 is quite slow. b6 doesn't really make any sense. Why would you play b6? First of all, to put the bishop on b7, I mean, this is a barrier anyway, so unless black can push d5, bishop b7 is not great. Like, bishop b7 only makes sense if black can push d5. Otherwise, if white is in time to blockade that, to play like, let's say, bishop c4, then knight d5, then that makes no sense. The bishop on b7 will be completely useless. Second of all, this is too slow. Clearly white, because white played g4, white wanna castle queenside. So why play b6? Why not go b5? And play more actively, right? And then like attack this knight with b4 or c4, potentially a5, a4, right? Just steamrolling white. That's like the only plan that makes sense if white's gonna castle queenside, right? To attack white with pawns. Way more aggressive. Or if not pushing the pawn, simply like develop a knight, like knight c6, for example, right? Just developing with the pieces. And then like bishop e6 and then b5, maybe put a rook on d8 to both defend the d6 pawn and prepare potentially d5, something like this, right? Would have been much more natural, but like c5 and then b6 does make sense because c5 is very aggressive, tactical move, and then the second move is slow. Plus c5, it's a tactical move, right? Dynamically it makes sense because it attacks our knight, but strategically it's also risky because it weakens the d6 pawn, weakens the d5 square. So you cannot make a strategically compromising move, but because it's good dynamically, and then second move make a slow move. If you say A, you have to say B. If you made one dynamic move, but a strategical concession, then you have to follow up with it. The second move should also be a dynamic one, right? You can play like a very active move, dynamic move, but strategically bad, and then not back it up and play b6, slow move. So then all you did is just weaken the d6 pawn and the d5 square, right? So if you play dynamically, you should keep up the tempo. Okay. Okay, so white plays h4 again. White completely ignores his king, right? Doesn't castle. Black has this weak d6 square, pawn and d5 square. What else white could have done? One move would be long castle, simply putting pressure on the pawn, right? That would be one idea. And already black has problems. If they go like rook d8, we have a million moves, starting from bishop f4, putting pressure on d6. When we also have g5, right, attacking the knight. Let's say the knight moves somewhere, let's say knight 8, and then we have knight d5 attacking the queen and attacking b6. Black already is much worse here. Like they have to make some awkward move, like queen a7 or something, not to lose the b6 pawn. But then we can, now the queen is far away from the king, and now we can play like h4, h5, open up the h file, move the bishop somewhere, and then slide the queen to h2, and then checkmate, basically, right? So this is like an idea. We can also play like even immediately g5, and if the knight moves again, knight d5, attacking the queen, attacking here. The knight also controls all these key squares, and next again h4, h5, castle long with huge advantage. So, right, so I think this was the way to go, or simply let's say castle long and after rook d8. If you don't want to play g5, still maybe then h4, h5. Although I think g5 is important. It's very key that we prevent d5, right? And potentially we can also like maybe play bishop c4 and then knight d5 and take like with a bishop, let's say. I mean, potentially we could activate our bishop because black did not play b5, right, and put it on this nice diagonal. Or yeah, I was thinking maybe even a4 potentially to stop b5. Maybe, yeah, a4 might be also sometimes an idea, though a bit risky if we're gonna castle queenside, because then that will be a pawn hook for b5, right? But okay, let's see. So b6, h4, bishop b7. See, now the problem is when we play knight d5 after, like, let's say g5, the knight moves, then now black can take. It's still, of course, big advantage, but black can take. Now black is not obliged to make this weird move like queen a7. See, so the timing is all about the timing. You wanna put your pieces on great squares before they are defended, right? Like right now. Always put your knight on this kind of square when your opponent cannot yet take, because then you win tempi, because when you attack the queen, then even if he does take it later on with bishop b7, bishop d5, yeah, but he has moved the queen, so that's the difference. But okay, let's see. h4, bishop b7, long castle, attacking the d6 pawn, rook d8 defending, h5, makes sense. White want to open up the h file, knight to c6, black develops, hg, fg, yeah, interesting. The risk of hg is that it completely opens the h file, right? So then like white can penetrate potentially. So this is like the risk. fg, the point is that at least black has a pawn. So when white plays queen h2, the file is not completely open. White cannot play queen h8, right? Potentially, because there is a pawn on h7. So this is the idea. The minus is it weakens the c4 g8 diagonal. So that's the risk. Now black has a very weak diagonal. So I don't know. I'm not so sure about that, but let's see. f4. I don't understand. Why would white play f4? Why? What does it do? I mean, if white want to play g5, they don't really need f4. To play e5, I don't think white want to play e5. So why play f4? What's the point? Doesn't make any sense. Like, or what? Was he afraid of maybe knight here? I mean, but the knight here is quite vulnerable. We could like potentially we could even play, let's say, knight d5. By the way, b6 is weak. Black simply loses the b6 pawn actually, like at the easiest. But let's say black plays like queen f8. First of all, of course, we could like take the b6 pawn, and then like not because there is no b6 pawn, black can never play b5. And so we can play like, let's say we make some, and then like we can play bishop c4, and we have like a forever bishop because there is no b5. And this is already a huge advantage. We have a million other moves, like for example, knight c7, and then after rook c8, knight e6, attacking the queen, the bishop, and the rook. But we can also maybe even sacrifice the rook if we want, rook h5. And now after gh, f4 makes sense because we'll open up the bishop, want to take h5, and also start the steamroll, right? And so here we have like huge compensation, I think, for the exchange. Or we can always also simply play f4. You want to prevent maybe like knight g3, but you can play like rook g1 maybe, or I don't know, and then f4. And the knight, let's say we make whatever move, and then like f4. And it's completely over, right? But we played rook g1 to prevent knight g3 first. So f4 not necessary, right? So why could we play simply g5 immediately with huge advantage? Or I don't know, if a check is also potentially interesting. And then let's say the point of a check would be that if black plays, let's say, king h8, and then let's say g5, and they go like here, then potentially there might be a tactic with like rook h7 check, king h7, and then queen h2 check. As you can see, black cannot play king g8, bishop h6, and now queen h6 checkmate. So this is the point of bishop c4. Sometimes there's this idea of sacrifice on h7. But okay, f4. Yeah, I mean, wait, knight e4 is a huge mistake. Wait. What about queen d5 check? Double attack. Right? Double attack, and now I have king h8. I'm curious if we don't... but like I said, I always look at this kind of stuff, because might be sometimes checkmating ideas, but at the very least we just like take on e4. That's it. Takes and game over basically, right? So double tap, we just take the knight. So why not simply take the knight? I don't understand. Right? Tactics. Okay, so knight e4, mistake, queen e4, f5. I mean, okay, f5 does make sense. White want to open up black's king. So f5 actually looks quite good, I think. Also potentially prepares maybe bishop h6. Okay, gf. Ooh. Now after gf, black's king is completely open. White has the g file. And the g7 bishop is quite weak. White can play rook g1 and bishop h6. Also the h7 pawn is weak. Also white can potentially activate his bishop on c4 maybe, or d3, and then push f6, and from d3 white's bishop will attack h7. This is basically over. Black is not super precise. Queen f5, okay. Rook g1. See, like I said, the goal when you have opposite castling is you wanna get rid of all the pawns and have open files for your rooks. That's the goal. You wanna open up files for your pieces to attack your opponent's king. Okay, knight e5. Black opens up the bishop and attacks h1. Bishop h6. So white ignores that and attacks g7. Not so sure if that works or not. I mean, that is a move. Another move actually would have been maybe, let's say, rook h5. Defending the rook with tempo, right? It's guarded by the bishop, attacking the queen, and then bishop h6 is also an interesting idea. Let's say black makes whatever move, they go somewhere, let's say like queen f8 or something, and then we can like maybe even rook g5 immediately, putting pressure, or bishop h6 first, right? And then rook g5. The point is white can activate his rook on g5 eventually. So I think rook h5 would make a lot of sense, and then we can always play bishop h6 next. So no need to sacrifice the rook. But okay, bishop h6. So black did not take. I mean, this would have been interesting. If we take over bishop, then maybe like knight g6, blocking the rook. And if rook h1, king g7 simply, right? Although there is still check, it's still interesting. Check, and then f7 is weak, right? Still actually looks pretty good, I guess. But maybe black also has some other moves. Although knight g6 looks, yeah. No, this is probably still fine for white, I guess, because we win h7. Yeah. Or there's also rook g7, but rook g7, king h8. Looks like queen is in a dangerous position, but I don't see a clear checkmate necessarily. Although I see rook g5 actually. Wait, there's rook g5 attacking the queen. Let's say the queen moves away somewhere. Let's say queen e6, and then there's bishop g7. Check, king here, and then bishop e5. See, it's all with check. and white is winning. Yeah, so there's this idea. So maybe rook g7 actually wins, right? Again, rook g7, king h8 here, queen goes somewhere, check, and then just bishop e5. Yeah. Anyway, okay, knight g6, bishop d3 attacking the queen, queen f6, threatening queen b2. Bishop g6, interesting. Why not bishop g7? Because white is threatening queen b2, so why not first take on? Why not take the bishop? I don't see the minus of taking the bishop. Why allow queen b2? Yeah, so this should be probably a mistake, but okay. Wait, so queen f6, bishop, so bishop g6, hg. So black decided not to take, yeah? I think he could have taken. Check here, and then maybe check. Actually, wait a bit. Here, yeah, this looks quite risky for white. I mean, bishop c3 is risky, pinning the queen, because now the king is quite open. So I'm not so sure about this. Maybe white might have some tactic here, like for example, bishop h7 check, and if takes, like bishop, although wait, the rook's attacked. The rook's attacked. So if check, white just takes. Bishop c3. Bishop c3. Maybe we just go like, I don't know, bishop, let's say e4 check, yeah, king h8, and then maybe we can play bishop g7 check, bishop takes g7, and now rook h7 check, right? King g8, and now of course this already should be winning. We can either just take on g7 with either rook and win the game. There also might be some other tactic. There also is like queen d5 check, right? And also should be completely winning, or simply take on g7 and white is winning. Yeah, so maybe we have like this idea, right? Simply moving the bishop somewhere, like e4 for example, and then king h8, and then like bishop g7, opening up h rook, and then like rook h7. Yeah. Yeah, but black can also maybe play like rook e8, although when we have bishop e8, yeah, should be fine. Or maybe, yeah, actually it's not that simple, as you can see. As you can see, it's not, because we have all this, even if we looks like we lose the queen, but actually we do not, because of all this pressure with our rooks. Okay, let's see. So black played hg, rook h3. The rook was attacked, yeah. Looks kind of slow. Again, black has queen b2, so why not take the bishop? I don't understand. Just take the bishop, and then like if king g7 we have queen h6 check, and should be winning. And if queen g7, when you don't play rook h3, but you can play rook h6 maybe, for example, yeah, and putting pressure on g6, or maybe rook h4, another idea, by the way, to prevent bishop e4, because bishop e4 black can potentially play and like defend g6. So to prevent bishop e4, and then rook g4, and then there is no bishop e4 guarding g6. But first take the bishop. Why not? I don't understand. Okay, rook h3, queen b2, yeah, bishop e4. Like I said, interesting. Guarding g6. Okay, knight c1, yeah. Yeah, that's a bit weird. I guess what they white wanna activate the knight. Yeah, sure. Looks wrong. Again, I think should have simply taken the bishop. Yeah, just like take the bishop again. If king takes, then just check. Should be dangerous. If queen takes, then the queen is no longer so active as it is on b2. So that's the plus, right? We make him go back. So well, yeah, knight c1, bishop h6, rook h6. Yeah, I mean if queen h6, there should be queen g7, right? Okay, rook h6, king g7 makes sense. Preparing rook h8, rook h4, white wanna play queen h4, h6 check. What? d5, rook h8, I think was a move. Though the minus of it is maybe, but again, it's not that simple. Maybe white could take on d6, but then we lose c2 and probably the game, right? So actually, we cannot really take on d6. So then rook h8 was quite safe. White cannot move a queen because of c2. So rook h8 was the right move. d5 I think is a huge mistake. Yeah, just check. Queen f6. Okay, check. Here. Rook h2. Guarding c2, yeah? Maybe. I mean, knight d3, simply bishop d3, yeah? Knight d3, we just take. I was thinking for a second about rook e4, and then like if d, queen g6, but d comes with a check. Rook e4 doesn't work. Looks a bit slow, rook h2, but yeah, maybe it's okay. All right, rook h2, rook h8, queen f4, takes, rook h8, queen d2, queen e5, rook e1, preparing, I guess, knight d3, rook h2, attacking our queen, knight e2, defending the queen, queen a1. Well, queen a1, actually bishop f3 I think is completely winning for black. Simply bishop f3. And now whatever move, white cannot even like move. White is in complete Zugzwang, right? Because all black's pieces attack our knight, so we can't really move anything. But even if we could, right, black can just like at any moment just like take and exchange everything at the very least, right? And black is completely winning. Black is completely winning. Yeah, so black actually should win this game actually. But let's see, queen a1 check, queen c1, queen a2c. Black chose to not trade and to take some pawn. This pawn is not that important. Way more important when your up material is to simplify the position, right? But okay, queen a2, knight f4, king f5, knight back to e2, rook f2, knight g3 check. See how much counterplay white gets, right? And it's not even just about the objective evaluation, it's about the practical evaluation. That's why a lot of people will like lose winning positions, because they complicate, they go after some pawns, when black could have simply played bishop f3. Very, very simple. You don't need no tricks or nothing, right? Just pin the knight and then simplify, go to the pawn endgame and win the game. So you don't need any tricks, okay? But okay, let's see. Okay, here, takes, here, takes. Well, another move I guess would have been rook g1, but okay, rook e4 makes sense. Rook e8 threatening rook f8. Rook c2. Wait, what? Rook c2? I mean, again could have simplified, like for example, a move would be like check. If white moves the king, black simply takes the rook. So white has to play rook e1, and now maybe some another check. We want to simply exchange all the pieces. If white plays queen d2, again, at the very least, we just like exchange and win if there is nothing else. And if king e2, again, we can just play like what? Queen f3 at the very least, right? King e3, and now again another check, and we simply actually win, because if rook e2, we just take and here, and if white moves the king somewhere else, then we just like take and win the game. Yeah. So again, very simple. Always look at checks at forcing moves first, right? Okay, rook c2. I don't understand. Okay, takes. And black here resigned. Yeah, white's completely winning. These pawns are vulnerable. Next, white just like attacks like this, and black cannot really defend the pawns. Plus, this pawn is still like is not like on g3 or g2. It's still far away from queening. And also very key is that our king is quite close. This is very key. Like if our king was like somewhere on a1 or a2, this would be maybe not as clear. But our king is very, very close. So this should be completely winning, because our king will also help together with rook to stop this pawn, and this king is also far away from these pawns, and these pawns just fall apart next after rook 8, rook b8. Yeah, so I think this was a very interesting, instructive game. I hope you enjoy. If so, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you in the next video.